Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to talk about the book Sex at Dawn, The Prehistoric Origins of Modern Sexuality, which was published in 2010 by Christopher Ryan and Sakilda Jetha. Someone recommended this book to me, and when I went to research what the book was about, a lot of people were citing it as a source to explain why they switched from monogamy to polyamory. So I read the book, and I thought that the authors failed to provide a sufficient amount of evidence to support their premise, which is that humans evolved to be polyamorous, and that means that polyamory is normal and preferable over monogamy. The book is about the evolution of human mating systems, making the claim that human beings evolved to have polyamorous mating habits similar to that of bonobos. The authors try to persuade the reader to consider polyamory as the most natural form of human sexuality, and they discuss the benefits of engaging in polyamorous relationships. If you're a supporter of any form of polyamory, you may agree with the authors of this book and believe that it's natural and ethical, but I simply ask that you give me an opportunity to change your mind. Before I begin, I'd like to provide some definitions just for clarification. So polyamory is the practice of engaging in multiple romantic relationships, which are typically sexual, with the consent of all people involved. Polygamy is the practice or custom of having more than one wife at a time, and it's called polyandry for women who have more than one husband. Polygyny refers to one man having more than one relationship with women who remain faithful to him outside the social construct of marriage. So polygyny is the same thing as polygamy, but without the marriage element. Promiscuity is the act of having many transient sexual relationships, demonstrating or implying an undiscriminating or unselective approach. Ethical non-monogamy is when partners in a relationship consent to pursuing sexual and romantic relationships with other people, so this is a form of polyamory. Open marriage is a marriage in which the partners agree to let each other have sexual partners outside the marriage without this being regarded by them as infidelity. So open marriage is also polyamory. An extramarital affair is a romantic relationship or encounter that happens between a married person and someone who is not the person's spouse without the consent of their spouse. So this is like cheating or adultery. A friend of mine said that he thinks there are no ethical or moral concerns surrounding polyamory. It's simply a matter of preference. It works for some people and it doesn't work for other people, that there is no right or wrong about it. And my response was, "Oh, you silly man. Of course there's a right and wrong about it. There's a right and wrong about everything that has the potential to cause human suffering. There are unintended consequences of sex, and whenever an activity has the ability to contribute to human suffering, then there are always moral implications involved." So what kind of evidence does Sex at Dawn present to explain the idea that humans have evolved to be naturally polyamorous and not monogamous? The authors claim that the reason modern humans, specifically men, have the innate compulsion to engage in sexual activity with several different people over the course of their lives is that humans evolved to be polyamorous. In other words, since people want to do it, it must be natural. The authors of the book presume that the predisposition to be promiscuous is a universal thing for all people. They fail to take into account that in modern times, there are other factors involved that could be influencing our societal norms surrounding relationships. Porn is now widely available for all men and women to watch at their leisure. Children are being exposed to graphic pornography at early ages, which then becomes imprinted on them psychologically. Watching porn causes men to seek out novelty because that's what they're exposed to as they go from video to video. They see what other people are doing, and then that makes them want to do the things that they see in porn. It's an addictive behavior. Typically, viewers of porn don't watch videos all the way through. Instead, they skip to the parts they like and then move on to more and more extreme videos, which increases their appetite for a variety of sexual extremism that they otherwise wouldn't even know about. This is one of the only times in the history of human civilization where men have had access to a large population of women who are willing to engage in promiscuous sex. And this is as a result of the advent of the birth control pill, as well as the feminist movement, which took place in the 1960s and 70s. If engaging in promiscuous sex is so ingrained in human beings, then why do men voluntarily join the priesthood? Men invented the institution of marriage, so why did they choose to define it as the union between one man and one woman? If the desire for a variety of sex partners is so pervasive, then why have so many people in the past and present found satisfaction and fulfillment in happy monogamous relationships? If God meant for men to be polygamous, then why did he give Adam only one woman, Eve? In the Bible, Jesus says a man will leave his father and mother and will live with his wife, and the two will become one. Not 3, not 4, not 5, but 2. Some people point out that there are biblical figures who practiced polygyny, like King Solomon and his 1,000-woman harem, and so that means that polygyny is okay. But that's just like saying that there are people in the Bible who practice slavery, so that makes slavery okay. Like it just doesn't work out like that. The book Sex at Dawn is saying that the mere existence of the urge to be promiscuous justifies the behavior and is proof that our ancestors practiced polyamory. Humans also evolved to crave sugar and fat, not because those things were widely available, but because they were scarce. And just because we really like eating sugar and fat, it doesn't mean that we should eat as much of it as we want to because it causes tooth decay and serious health problems. Just because we want to do something doesn't mean that we should or that it would be beneficial. Furthermore, what about other natural feelings that people have about sex? Things like jealousy. Why does a person experience heartache and even anguish at the thought of their spouse sleeping with other people? Why are men revolted by women who are prostitutes or have a high body count? How do you account for all the other negative feelings people universally have towards sex? The authors of Sex at Dawn reasoned that because ancient humans lived in hunter-gatherer societies where resources were shared among the group, that they must have also shared sex partners and mates. So sex is different from food and other resources because it results in people having babies and forming pair bond relationships. I mean, isn't giving every man a woman of his own a form of sharing? Social cohesion was very important to our ancestors because the only way for humans to exist was in tribes, where people were able to cooperate with each other for the sake of the group's survival. Avoiding conflict within these societies, which consisted of on average 150 people, was crucial for things like hunting and banding together to protect the tribe. If a society permitted male polygyny, it would have interfered with the social dynamic. If one man had 10 women who were all faithful to him, that means that there would be other men with 0 women and 0 access to sex. Because the number of women of childbearing age was limited, and the ratio of men to women is 50-50. The Pareto principle applies to animals who are polygynous, where 20% of the males have all the females, and 80% of the males, presumably of lower status, have 0 females. This would also certainly apply to humans. All the excess males, full of frustration and testosterone, would have no incentive to cooperate in society and might even be prone to violence in order to compete for harems, and this would disturb the peace and break down social cohesion. The book cites research that says that the presence of female orgasms and the concealed ovulation in humans served to confuse males. They claim that females would recreationally have sex with several males so that none of them would be certain of paternity, reducing the risk that the next alpha male would kill her offspring because they may or may not be his. Desmond Morris was a famous anthropologist who wrote several books. One of them is called The Naked Ape, which was published in 1967. According to Desmond Morris, the reason females experience orgasms is to strengthen pair bond relationships with men, because orgasms release oxytocin. This is why women are not just sexually active during ovulation, but for the entire month. Another theory is that concealed ovulation, which means it's not obvious to other people when she's fertile, caused men to become possessive of women, keeping an eye on them to make sure they didn't have sex with other males, and this could actually be the origins of marriage. The book points to our primate relatives, the bonobos, who spend all day having sex with each other in promiscuous ways, and this is supposed to somehow prove that it's natural behavior for humans because we're so closely related genetically. It's true that bonobos are one of our closest living primate relatives. They're basically the same as chimpanzees, but their behavior separates them into a distinct species. Bonobos are matriarchal, meaning the females have a higher status than the males. Female bonobos actually gain status with age, which is the opposite of human societies. Bonobos also commit incest on a regular basis in every disgusting way imaginable. I guess if humans decided to move to the rainforest and live in trees where mature females were promoted to leaders, then maybe it would make sense to participate in family orgies, but I doubt that people would want to live that way. Humans aren't bonobos. Just because bonobos do it doesn't mean that people should do it. In the book, they overlook biological evolutionary traits that point to monogamy. According to Desmond Morris in The Naked Ape, there's something called genital echo theory. According to this theory, there are biological indicators that prove that copulation in humans evolved to be face-to-face. In Sex at Dawn, the authors mention this adaptation and claim that the purpose for its existence is to signal fertility in females, but they failed to mention the other evolutionary interpretations. For as similar as humans are to chimpanzees, there's a considerable difference between female secondary sex traits. The shape and appearance of the lips of female chimps are identical to that of males, whereas female humans have lips that are pouty with a pink tint to them, and they resemble the appearance of what female genitalia looks like from behind. Additionally, the mammary tissues of female chimps are more flattened and conical, which is ideal for nursing an infant. But human female breast tissue, on the other hand, is distinctly rounded and pendulous, and cleavage is supposed to remind men of the hemispherical shape of a woman's rear end. These frontal erogenous zones are visual signals for men that mimic the mating posture of our hominid ancestors and elicit male responsiveness towards the front side of our bodies. The reason for these anatomical differences between humans and chimps has to do with bipedalism and face-to-face mating habits. Chimps copulate using the rear approach, which lacks intimacy. During face-to-face copulation, people maintain eye contact, which results in the release of dopamine and oxytocin for both people. Oxytocin is a vital hormone. It's released when mothers nurse their babies, and it fosters a bond between the mother and the infant. It's also the chemical that is responsible for feeling in love with someone. When oxytocin is released during sex, it strengthens relationships and leads to the creation of pair bonds in couples. This is important because without forming bonds, a mother and her baby would be at a much higher risk for death back in the prehistoric past. Human babies are all born prematurely, even when they are carried to term. Infant chimps do rely on their caregivers, but are far more developed than humans are at birth. Human babies would have to undergo gestation for 18 to 21 months instead of the usual 9 months to be born at the same level of neurological and cognitive development as chimps, and that's from Scientific American. Infant chimps are 75% developed at birth, whereas human infants are 25% developed at birth. Premature fetal births is an adaptation that relates to both the size of babies' brains and the restricted width of human female pelvises. This is why human infants are so helpless and parentally demanding, especially when compared to chimpanzees or bonobos. This is also why human babies need both their mothers and fathers to survive. Due to the harsh conditions in which ancient humans evolved, mothers were required to dedicate all their time and energy into keeping their children alive. They had to breastfeed them until they were 4 and 5 years old. If they failed to keep their infants fed, dry, and comfortable, the baby's cries would get the attention of nearby predators and other dangerous humans. Keeping the baby alive meant also keeping the mother alive. This is why establishing a pair bond with the baby's father was so crucial for women. If the father abandoned his mate and his child, they would have died. Over time, abandonment behavior in males was selectively weeded out because their offspring just didn't make it. Female hypergamy in the modern world has failed us because single motherhood is now acceptable and subsidized. Children born of fathers who forsake their pair-bonded mates carry on their father's genetics, which further propagates bad behavior over time. New generations live to adulthood and reproduce children of their own, potentially imitating their deadbeat dads, as well as passing down defective DNA. The book only briefly mentions children, saying that it can be enriching for children to have more than 2 adults around to parent them. They say that it's preferable to engage in polyamory and stay married over getting a divorce. When I look online to find information about polyamory and its effect on children, I find articles saying that it has negative consequences for children psychologically. I also find forums of people who are highly offended over questions posed by users that imply that it can cause damage. Polyamorous people respond with fury, defiantly defending their lifestyle choices and balking at the assumption that there's even a possibility that it could be harmful to children. I think that their responses are so vehement because deep down, they don't have a clear conscience about it. Babies evolve to form an almost unbreakable bond with one parent, usually their mother. The reason for this is because if a child is in danger, which was often the case for ancient humans, the child needed to be able to quickly signal that they were in danger by making eye contact with their immediate primary caregiver. If the child had bonded with more than one adult, then the child might hesitate on who to send their danger signal to. Deliberation would waste precious seconds that could cost the child their life. When children are raised in polyamorous environments, such as the arrangements that are discussed in Sex at Dawn, children form attachments to multiple parental figures. If the relationship fluctuates and partners come and go, the child experiences feelings of loss and grief for the adults that they become attached to and who depart from the situation. Children may experience similar feelings in the event of a divorce, but at least they get the opportunity to see both parents through visitation. Children are constantly picking up on implicit lessons from their parents. They take notice of even subtle changes in behavior. When people with children participate in polyamory, they send an unspoken message to their kids that they prioritize their own adult sexual desires over the well-being of their children, and that in general, people are disposable and interchangeable. Adults do not take part in polyamory for the sake of their children. They do it for themselves. Children with polyamorous parents don't learn how to value people unconditionally, but instead as sexual partners who come and go on the basis of how much they can fulfill another person's needs. They learn that relationships are about personal gratification, not love and devotion. They also learn that it's okay to be promiscuous, but that isn't true, especially for women. Men openly admit that the more people a woman sleeps with, the less valuable she becomes. Polyamory teaches daughters to devalue themselves, and it teaches sons how to objectify women. The primary purpose for the institution of marriage is that it creates the most ideal situation for raising children. Sexual exclusivity ensures male paternity and gives women security and resources. Children need consistency in their lives, and monogamous relationships offer a stable environment and provide consistent parental figures who endow the child with good values, such as trustworthiness, honesty, and kindness. Monogamous people serve as role models for their children and teach them how to control their impulses and how to invest in other people. The book doesn't discuss any benefits to monogamy. There's another benefit of marriage that I think a lot of people, especially men, don't consider. If a man is ethically non-monogamous and has no desire to have children anytime soon, he may choose to spend his 20s and 30s chasing tail instead of finding a life partner. If he manages to make it into his 40s without fathering any kids or giving everyone genital warts for Christmas, he may think that he has a lot of time left before he has to get married and start a family. But the problem is that bad things happen to good people all the time. There are certain effects of aging that virtually no one escapes, like incontinence and osteoarthritis. Old age causes men to lose their hair, and it slows down their metabolism. There are other conditions that people can develop, like diabetes or mental illness. You have no guarantee that you won't get into a car accident and become paralyzed. You have no guarantee that you won't get a disease or become impotent. If you're married to a woman who is around your age, chances are she will stay with you and take care of you. If you're married to a much younger woman, she might divorce you, put you in a nursing home, and find another man because she still has time to do that. Even if you suddenly lose your job and your status plummets, a life partner is more likely to remain by your side and help you get through hard times that are caused by unforeseen events. Men like to think that they'll be self-sufficient for the rest of their lives, but everyone goes through difficult things, and in the end, nobody wants to die alone. There's a perception that the people who participate in polyamory or polygyny are acting like a bunch of overgrown teenagers, minimizing the risks associated with licentious behavior, as though it's old-fashioned to be concerned about STDs or unwanted pregnancies. At some point, someone needs to be the adult in the room and stand up to denounce this sanctioned social abnormality. Face it, if you're a parent who embraces the poly lifestyle, you're immature, and you're putting your sexual interests above your children. The people who are using the book Sex at Dawn to say that their poly lifestyles are more natural than monogamy are grasping at straws to defend their hedonism. Open marriage has a 92% failure rate, and the average duration of a polyamorous relationship is 5 to 7 years. If you think about it, polyamory is basically an arrangement in which married couples have affairs with their spouse's permission, and extramarital affairs run their course and usually only last 6 months to a couple of years at most. The authors of Sex at Dawn and proponents of polyamory say marriage is a failure, but they're not taking into account all the modern-day factors that contribute to divorce, like porn, hookup culture, dating apps, sex positivity, and the lack of social stigma surrounding promiscuity. There are a lot of things that people have evolved to do and want to do that are not acceptable by today's standards. The authors of Sex at Dawn admire the uninhibited sexual behavior of primitive societies, but would they be willing to live in one? Would the men be capable of waking up and hunting from dawn till dusk and sleeping in grass huts? Would the women breastfeed their children until they were 5 years old? Just because a certain behavior was practiced by an ancient society, it doesn't make it okay to continue that behavior in our modern world. I went into this book being fairly indifferent towards polyamory, but I came out the other side of it actually being against it because the book just fails to provide any good arguments that are convincing for why it should be mainstream. So thank you for watching this video. If you have read Sex at Dawn, or if you have any thoughts about polyamory, feel free to go ahead and leave me a comment down below. And as always, thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I will see you next time.